Tara lingered motionless in the heart of her fenced area, the vivid afternoon rays heating her sturdy grey hide, though she hardly sensed it. The air around the zoo thrummed with the noises of households, youngsters giggling, and the far-off cries of fellow creatures. Yet Tara stayed immersed in her private sphere. Her broad eyes brimmed with grief. She'd dwelt at Evergreen Town Wildlife Park for numerous years, yet she'd never genuinely fit in. Each sunrise, she'd awaken and gaze at the lofty iron bars that cut her off from the wider realm. She'd hear the remote roar of vehicles, the prattle of sightseers, and the swishing of branches beyond the zoo's limits. It wasn't her haven. Tourists often halted at her pen, eyeing her with fascination. Some clicked cameras, some gestured at her enormous bulk, and a few even caught the hushed tears that now and then trickled down her coarse face. Certain tender-hearted onlookers would pause, breathing soft phrases, but Tara never stirred. She'd grasped long before that her lot wouldn't shift. She was isolated. Rose, the caretaker assigned to Tara's well-being, observed her from a distance. She'd toiled at the zoo for ages and had watched all manner of beasts adapt to their settings. Some prospered, some took ages to ease in. But Tara stood apart. There was a quality in her stare, something vast and woeful. Rose had tried every approach, spending added moments by Tara, murmuring to her gently, presenting her beloved goodies, even piping tranquil tunes near her space. But nothing clicked. The elephant nibbled less, shifted less, and scarcely noted the other creatures nearby. Dr. James Ridge, the zoo's animal healer, had also tracked Tara keenly. He'd labored with beasts his whole career and could spot when one was ailing. At first he figured Tara might be unwell, but after conducting checks, he found no physical flaws. Still, her hunger had dwindled and she was shedding pounds. He'd seen such patterns before. Beasts, especially sharp ones like elephants, could bear emotional scars, much like humans. Solitude, mourning, and strain could sap their vigor. He knew that unless something altered soon, Tara's health might worsen. Rose often found herself posted outside Tara's pen late at dusk, long after the masses had gone. She'd watch as Tara stood still, sometimes swaying gently, as if adrift in musings. A burden weighed on Rose's chest each time she viewed her. She knew Tara had faced something harrowing before arriving, though her whole saga was a blank. Tara had landed at Evergreen Town Wildlife Park ages back. Logs stated she'd been plucked from tough straits, but details of her roots were missing. Some crew guessed she'd once been in a circus or roving act. Others reckoned she'd been snatched from the wild as a youth. But Tara's yesteryears stayed an enigma. Rose couldn't shake the hunch that Tara wasn't just another creature. Settling into captivity, she was biding time for something or someone. Before reaching the zoo, Tara's days had overflowed with warmth and bliss. She'd pulsed with life and kindness. She'd resided on a rural estate amid sprawling pastures, soft ridges, and a curving creek that shimmered in the daylight, a serene nook far from city din, where time glided calmly. Tara hadn't started there. She'd been birthed in a distant stretch deep in the wilds, where wide swathes of earth, streams, woods, and open flats sprawled. She'd been part of a modest elephant band near a thick grove, munching tall stalks and sipping from the chill river flow. Life had been serene, at first cradled by her mother and the herd that steered and guarded her as she learned to toddle, feed, and roam her world. But then a mighty tempest tore through the region, hauling fierce rains and gusts. Trees were wrenched up, waters bloated, and her once secure home turned treacherous. In the mayhem, Tara lost her mother. The band had bolted to seek shelter, but Tara, still tiny and poky, trailed behind. When the storm finally eased, she was alone. Soon, a cluster of folks found her, people who'd come to gauge the tempest's ruin. They spied the small elephant, frail and scared, and knew she wouldn't last solo. They chose to ferry her to a close village for care until a steady home surfaced. Talk of the stray baby elephant spread fast, soon reaching Henry Brooks, a retired grower with a fierce love for critters. He'd spent his life taking in cast-off or hurt beings, coaxing them back to strength on his quiet plot. When he learned of Tara, he felt driven to aid. Henry trekked to the hamlet, finding Tara in a tight stall, forlorn and timid. He saw the woe in her eyes, how she hunted for something familiar, yet found nil. Without a second thought, he offered to bring her home. The villagers, knowing his fame for tending critters, agreed. Hauling Tara to the estate wasn't easy. She was small, but needed space, food, and patience. Henry saw she got it all. From her first day, he handled her with care, speaking low to her, ensuring she felt safe. It didn't take long for Tara to feel at ease. His grandson, Ethan, was the first to embrace her, a wee boy full of thrill and wonder. The moment he saw Tara, his eyes sparkled with delight. He reached for her without fear, and she felt secure. From that day they were a pair. Ethan and Tara spent their hours together, romping under the shade of the grand oak by the farmhouse, dashing through the meadows, splashing in the shallow stream when days grew hot. Ethan would pluck fruit for her, laughing as she took it gently from his fingers. Tara shadowed him everywhere, reading his voice, his moves, even his tempers. She knew when he was glad, when he was blue, when he needed cheer. Henry watched them with silent joy. He'd always believed critters and folks could share a deep bond, and seeing his grandson with Tara proved it. The estate was a fine place for her. Room to ramble, fresh eats to enjoy, and love all around. But peace didn't last forever. As Ethan grew, things at the estate shifted. Henry's vigor faded, his pace slowed, and he rested more. The once bustling plot started to feel off. Ethan's parents saw the change and knew a call had to be made. Henry had been Tara's keeper, but now he was too weak to go on. The estate's costs climbed, and caring for an elephant was no light task. They knew they couldn't give her the life she needed anymore. Ethan didn't get it at first. To him, Tara wasn't just an elephant. She was his best mate, his clan. He'd matured with her, and the thought of losing her was crushing. But his parents thought they were doing right. They found a spot vowing to tend her, a refuge with other elephants, believing she'd be happier there. The day Tara left was the darkest in Ethan's life. Men came with a big transport rig, and Tara felt something amiss. She balked at first, staying close to Ethan. As if she knew what was coming, Ethan gripped her, tears in his eyes, but he was too small to stop it. His parents swore she'd be fine, well cared for, but Ethan didn't want to hear it. To him, Tara belonged with him on the estate where they'd always been. No one listened. She was led off, her big eyes full of confusion. She turned back, looking for Ethan one last time. He reached for her, but she was taken before he could act. As the rig rolled out of sight, Tara let out a deep, mournful wail, the last sound Ethan ever heard from her. After that, the estate felt barren. Ethan still went to the oak, still walked the creek, but nothing was the same. Tara was gone, and no one knew what became of her after. Neither Ethan nor Tara had realized their split would span years, nor that one day fate would draw them back together. Ethan grew up fast, and his love for critters never dimmed. It all began with Tara. As a kid, he'd spent hours with her, forming a tie unlike any other in his life. When she was taken, something in him changed. The estate, once full of joy, felt empty, but he held tight to their shared past. At first, Ethan wrestled with her loss. He spent his teen years trying to fill the gap she'd left, helping his parents on the plot, caring for the beasts, focusing on lessons. But nothing truly replaced being with Tara. After high school, Ethan wasn't sure what road to take. He knew he wanted to work with critters, but he didn't know how to make it a future. But his parents gave him all the support and push he needed, so he opted to study at a university with a strong wildlife saving course. Getting in wasn't easy. He worked hard to pay for it, taking side gigs on nearby farms, cleaning critter pens at a local aid center, even volunteering at a vet clinic. Every stint taught him something new, strengthening his vow to dedicate his life to beasts. His college years were packed with learning. He studied biology, critter behavior, and nature care, but what fired him up most were the fieldwork chances. His first big trip was to a wildlife reserve where he saw elephants roam free. Watching them stirred something deep in him. He couldn't help but think of Tara and wonder where she was. After graduating, Ethan chased internships at critter sanctuaries. He traveled to far-off places, learning from pros and working close with elephants, helping rehab rescued ones, aiding in treatments, studying their ways. With each step, his knowledge grew, but so did the feeling something was missing. No matter where he went, no matter how many elephants he worked with, he never stopped thinking of Tara. He often wondered if she was still alive, if she was content, or if she'd found a new herd. One evening, scrolling a wildlife site, he found a video that stopped his heart. It showed an elephant at Evergreen Town Wildlife Park, standing alone, her eyes full of sadness. The post said she cried almost daily, as if longing for something, or someone. Ethan's breath caught as he stared. He knew her instantly, the shape of her ears, the small marks on her skin. It was Tara. A flood of emotions hit him. He'd spent years seeking purpose, and now, in a moment, he knew what to do. Without hesitation, he decided to go back. He had to see her again. Meanwhile, Tara's condition kept slipping. Each day, she grew more withdrawn, her once lively spirit now buried under sadness. She ate less, barely touched her surroundings, and spent most time standing still. Even when visitors gathered at her pen, she showed no interest. The kids who used to laugh with glee at seeing an elephant now left with puzzled looks, wondering why Tara seemed so down. Rose watched with growing alarm. She'd cared for many beasts in her zoo years, but Tara was different. There was a deep sorrow in her eyes, something no care or attention could fix. Dr. James noticed too. He'd always thought an animal's physical state tied to its feelings, and Tara's sadness was starting to harm her body. If she kept refusing food and staying still, it could lead to serious trouble. The zoo boss, Mr. Grayson, held a meeting with staff to talk about Tara's state. There were ideas of moving her to another place, maybe one with more elephants, or better setup, but Rose fought it hard. She believed moving Tara again would only worsen things, shifting her to a strange spot, away from the few who loved her, would deepen her loneliness. To help, the zoo brought in another elephant, Ravi. A younger male was added, hoping company would lift Tara's mood. Staff watched closely as he joined her pen. At first, Ravi approached with curiosity, reaching out his trunk to greet, but Tara barely looked at him. She didn't react, showed no wish to play or bond. Instead, she walked away, standing at the pen's far end, head low. Days passed, but nothing changed. Ravi tried again and again, sometimes nudging her lightly, sometimes making soft calls to get her notice. But Tara stayed distant. It was as if her heart had no space for a new link. She was holding on to something else, something no one at the zoo could grasp. One evening, after the zoo closed and the last visitors left, Rose stayed back. She stood by Tara's pen, watching. As the elephant stayed in her usual lonely corner, the sky had darkened, the air was calm, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves. Then Rose saw something that broke her heart. Tara slowly lifted her trunk to the sky, stretching, as if reaching for something far past the zoo walls. She stayed that way a long while, still, as if yearning for something gone. The sight brought a heavy sadness. Tara wasn't just lonely, she was waiting for something or someone to come back. After seeing the video of Tara crying at the zoo. Ethan knew he had to find a way to reach her, but he also knew he couldn't just walk in and stay. He needed a plan. Without delay, he started researching Evergreen Town Wildlife Park, looking into their programs, staff, and how they handled their animals. The more he learned, the more determined he got. He wanted to be near Tara, not just for a quick visit, but as long as possible. Ethan found an open job for a wildlife researcher at the zoo. He applied right away, highlighting his years with elephants. Days went by with no answer, so he applied again and again. He was set on it. He knew getting hired wasn't easy. Lots of people wanted such jobs, and competition was tough. But Ethan wouldn't quit. He sent follow-up notes explaining his past and passion for elephants, even called the zoo office to check on his application. Weeks passed with no luck. It was frustrating, but he kept reminding himself why he was doing it. He couldn't let Tara down. Finally, after many tries, he got an interview call. He prepared carefully, making sure to show not just his experience, but his deep knowledge of elephant behavior. When the interview ended, he felt hopeful. A few days later he got word. He'd been hired. He packed his bags and left at once, ready to start a new phase. For the first time in years, he felt on the right path. Soon, he'd be with Tara. Again. Ethan arrived at Evergreen Town Wildlife Park early morning, his heart racing with excitement. The trip back had been full of feelings. Joy, nerves, and a deep longing he'd carried for years. He dreamed of this moment, but now here, he felt unsure. Would Tara remember him? Would she still feel their old tie after all this time? As he stepped through the gates, Rose and Dr. James met him. They'd been told of his coming and knew his story. Rose had seen Tara's loneliness up close. If Ethan was really the one she'd waited for, this could change it all. Dr. James, though cautious, was hopeful. He'd studied animal ways for years and knew elephants never forgot those they loved. Without wasting time, Ethan walked to Tara's pen. His heart pounded with each step. He'd worked with elephants for years, but this was different. This was Tara, his childhood friend, the one he'd never stopped thinking of. As he reached her pen, he saw her in her usual spot, far from visitors. Her eyes looked empty. She was thinner than he remembered, and a sadness hung over her that tightened his chest. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer and softly called her name. Tara raised her head slightly, her ears twitching at the sound. For a moment, she stood still, staring at him, confusion in her eyes, as if trying to recall something buried deep. Then suddenly it all changed. Her eyes widened, her body tensed, and in seconds she rushed to the fence. A deep, excited sound came from her, one Ethan knew from long ago. She reached out with her trunk, desperate to close the gap. Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he moved forward and gently touched her trunk. The moment his hand met her rough skin, Tara made another sound, soft this time, full of feeling. She remembered. The years apart hadn't wiped out what they'd had. She hadn't forgotten the boy who'd been her closest friend. Around them, people started to gather. Visitors, staff, keepers who'd never seen Tara act this way. Whispers of amazement spread as they watched the warm reunion. For the first time in years, Tara's eyes held no sadness. They shone with joy. She was no longer alone. The one she'd waited for had come back. Getting the job at Evergreen Town Wildlife Park had been a dream come true for Ethan. After many attempts, he'd finally got the chance to work near Tara. From the moment he arrived, he knew he wanted to stay as long as the zoo would have him. Every day he spent hours by Tara's side, watching her, caring for her, making sure she felt safe. He helped staff feed her, clean her pen, even brought new activities to keep her busy, hoping to bring back the playful spirit she'd once had. It didn't take long for Tara to change. She started eating well, no longer pushing food away. She splashed water on herself, played with branches, moved with more energy. Even Ravi, the other elephant, seemed to notice. Slowly, Tara began to interact with him, standing closer, sometimes touching trunks. Rose, and Dr. James was stunned at how fast Tara's health improved. For years they'd tried different ways to help her, but nothing worked. Now, with Ethan there, she was a different elephant. Her sadness lifted, replaced by a new sense of life. One afternoon, as Ethan watched Tara play, he opened up to Rose about his past. He shared stories of his childhood, how he and Tara grew up together on his grandfather's farm, how losing her left a hole in his heart. He admitted he'd felt guilty for years, thinking he'd failed her by not stopping her from leaving. Rose was moved by Ethan's tale. She could see how much Tara meant to him, and it was clear Tara felt the same. The bond they shared was unlike anything she'd seen. As time passed, Ethan and Rose became close pals, both linked by their deep love for animals. They often talked about ways to better the zoo elephants' lives, sharing ideas, learning from each other. Despite his happiness, Ethan couldn't ignore one fact. His job meant he had to travel. He devoted his life to helping elephants in need. And while he loved being with Tara, he knew he might have to leave someday. The thought troubled him. He'd worked so hard to get this job, to be near Tara again. Now here, he didn't want to lose her again. He hoped he'd find a way to stay. As days went on, Tara kept getting better. But Ethan couldn't shake a growing worry. He'd helped her regain her spirit, but was the zoo really the best place for her? He'd spent years in sanctuaries where elephants had open land to roam, social groups to bond with, a life closer to what they were meant for. Seeing Tara confined to a small space, even with Ravi for company, made him wonder if she truly belonged here. One afternoon, Ethan sat in a meeting with zoo leaders. Staff had gathered to discuss Tara's future. Tensions were high. Some thought since she was doing better, she should stay. Others, including Ethan, felt she deserved more, a place where she could live as freely as possible. Ethan suggested moving Tara to an elephant sanctuary. He explained how sanctuaries gave elephants more space, natural settings, better quality of life. He'd seen how elephants thrived there, forming strong bonds, healing from past pain. He believed Tara, after all she'd been through, deserved that. Rose sat quietly listening. A part of her didn't want to let Tara go. She'd cared for her for years, worried over her when she was at her lowest, finally saw her come back to life, losing her hurt. But deep down, she knew Ethan was right. As much as Tara was loved at the zoo, it wasn't the same as the open land she could have at a sanctuary. Mr. Grayson, the zoo director, wasn't convinced. He knew how hard it was to move a big elephant. Costs would be high, the process tricky. There were risks. What if Tara didn't adjust to the new place? What if she got hurt on the way? The zoo had put so much into her care. Was it really needed to send her away now she was happy again? As talks went on, Tara seemed to sense the uncertainty. She'd always been sensitive to emotions. When Ethan wasn't around, she got restless, pacing her pen, looking toward the entrance as if waiting for him. Ravi tried to comfort her, but she stayed uneasy. Rose noticed and grew more sure Tara needed more. No matter how much love the zoo gave, it was still a limited space. Tara needed a place to roam free, choose her own friends, experience the world beyond the walls. After the meeting, Ethan walked to Tara's pen, watching as she stood quietly, her trunk reaching to the sky. Like she'd done so many times, he knew if he truly wanted what was best for her, he had to fight for it. But convincing the zoo to let her go wouldn't be easy. After weeks of talks, the zoo leaders finally decided Tara would be moved to a wildlife sanctuary. It wasn't an easy choice, but after thinking about her long-term good, they agreed it was best. Ethan had worked hard to find sanctuaries that could offer Tara space, freedom, companionship she needed. Rose had also helped convince Mr. Grayson that this was the proper course to take. Once the choice was settled, the subsequent task was orchestrating Tara's relocation. Shifting a massive elephant demanded meticulous groundwork. The crew enlisted experts skilled in moving pachyderms, guaranteeing Tara's safety and ease throughout the trip. A custom travel box was crafted, permitting her to shift freely within, while staying protected. Over multiple days, the workers acclimated her to the box by setting her meals inside and allowing her to enter and exit at will. The aim was to ensure she'd remain relaxed when the real move occurred. As preparations pressed on, another debate emerged. What about Ravi? He'd only been at the zoo briefly, but lately he and Tara had bonded more. He'd been among the first to detect Tara's gloom when Ethan was absent, and though she'd been aloof initially, she'd gradually begun acknowledging his company. Now the notion of parting them felt unjust. Ethan and Rose proposed transferring Ravi too. If Tara was heading to a fresh spot, having a known friend might smooth the shift. Plus, the refuge had voiced eagerness to grow its elephant herd, and Ravi, being a robust and fit male, was an ideal pick for companionship and possible breeding. After thorough deliberation, the zoo consented. They reached out to the refuge, which gladly embraced the plan to include Ravi. He'd not only offer Tara solace during the change, but would also gain from the expansive terrain and social prospects the refugee provided. With the scheme locked in, the crew started readying both elephants for the voyage. On departure day, a throng assembled at the zoo. Over recent weeks, Tara's tale had stirred many guests, and folks had come to bid farewell. Youngsters waved, clans snapped pictures, and longtime zoo backers observed with blended feelings. It was a scene of both sorrow and delight. Tara was departing, but she was bound for a brighter existence. Rose stood next to Ethan, feeling moved yet gratified. They'd collaborated to grant Tara this shot, and now she was poised to embark on a fresh phase. As the travel rig rolled up, Tara and Ravi were tenderly ushered into their boxes. They stayed composed, sensing this was something distinct, something vital. Before the rig's doors shut, Ethan lingered near Tara, letting her glimpse him. Once more before the trek, he'd lost her once long ago, but this time he vowed he wouldn't vanish from her world. As the rig drove off, he knew this wasn't their story's close. It was merely the dawn of something novel. The voyage to the elephant refuge was lengthy and precisely charted. The transport squad had plotted the securest path, ensuring Tara and Ravi would enjoy a steady and pleasant ride. The rig hauling them was specially built for pachyderms, giving them enough room to adjust slightly while keeping them safe. Air holes supplied crisp breezes, and plush padding was laid below to soften their stance during the haul. Ethan and Rose trailed in a separate car, their gazes rarely drifting far from the rig ahead. They understood this trip was more than a mere physical passage. It was an emotional leap for Tara. She'd spent years boxed in a zoo pen, never tasting true liberty, while the shift was intended to offer her a finer life. The uncharted could be daunting for her. Ravi, conversely, hadn't lingered in captivity as long. He'd matured in a broader setting before arriving at the zoo, so he was anticipated to adjust more readily. Throughout the trek, Ethan and Rose stayed in touch with the transport crew. Updates from the experts riding with Tara and Ravi were largely upbeat. Tara held steady mostly, though there were times she seemed uneasy, shifting her bulk awkwardly or emitting low, unsure grunts. Each time, Ravi would reply with a soothing hum, standing near as if assuring her she wasn't solitary. After hours on the route, the caravan at last reached the refuge. The site was immense, with boundless meadows, woods, and natural streams. It was all Ethan and Rose had pictured for Tara, a realm where she could wander unbound, mingle with fellow elephants, and live the existence she was destined for. The refuge workers were primed, set to welcome the newcomers. The unloading was handled with patience and caution. The transport team had parked the rig beside a spacious enclosed zone that would act as a short-term settling area for Tara and Ravi. The gates stood ajar, leading to a sweeping vista. But for now, They'd be given time to adapt to their close surroundings before meeting the refuge's wider expanse. Ravi stepped out first. He moved boldly, his snout raised as he absorbed the fresh scents around him. Tara, though, wavered. She lingered at the box's brink, shifting restlessly. For years, her reality had been hemmed by zoo walls. The open expanse ahead was alien, and she was uncertain what to do. Ravi felt her reluctance. Instead of darting off to roam, he circled back and stood beside her, lending her his steady presence. Gradually, Tara took a wary step forward. The earth beneath her felt odd, gentler, more organic. Another step, then another with Ravi beside her. She finally strode out into the open. The refuge workers observed keenly, ensuring the shift went smoothly. Ethan and Rose stood close, holding their breath. This was the instant they'd labored for, the chance for Tara to begin anew. In the first few days, Tara found it tough to settle. She'd spent countless years in a tight space, so the abrupt liberty felt overpowering. The vast terrain, the strange hums of the wild, and the distant view of other elephants unnerved her. Instead of venturing out, she often clung near the barrier, hesitant to stray far from where she'd first arrived. Ravi, by contrast, took to it fast. He roamed his new turf, relishing the room to stretch. He splashed in the water pit, toyed with timber, and chatted with some elephants from afar. But he never wandered too far from Tara. Whenever she stood frozen, unsure what to do, he'd swing back to her side, prodding her lightly as if urging her onward. The refuge workers were patient, giving Tara the time she required. They offered her known foods to ease her and kept a vigilant watch on her actions. Ethan and Rose came by as often as possible, spending hours near her pen, speaking to her in the soft tones she'd known. Since youth, at first Tara stayed aloof, responding only faintly, lifting her snout slightly only when Ethan and Rose approached to see her. She edged nearer when Rose sat close. But as days rolled on, something in her began to shift. She started to adjust bit by bit. Ravi played the largest part in Tara's growth. He never left her behind, always ensuring she felt secure. When he roamed, he did so leisurely, glancing back to see if she'd trail. When she faltered, he returned as if telling her she needn't fear. One day, after weeks of careful easing, Tara finally took a stride toward change. She watched Ravi splash in the water pit, clearly savoring it. For a moment, she just looked. Then, as if something within her shed its dread, she stepped toward the water. It was the first time she'd chosen to approach something new. Rose and Ethan, visiting that day, watched in wonder. Tara entered the water, at first timidly, then with growing sureness. Ravi, sensing the change, drew near and playfully doused her with water. For the first time in ages, Tara reacted. She raised her snout and splashed back. It was a small act, but for those who'd seen her wrestle, it was a milestone. From that day, Tara's shift continued. She began roaming more of the refuge, walking farther each day. She mingled with other elephants, forging new ties. The gloom that had once clouded her eyes slowly melted, replaced by interest and peace. Months passed, and Tara became a transformed elephant. The fear that had once gripped her was gone, swapped for boldness. She no longer lingered by barriers, scared of the open. Instead, she roamed freely with Ravi and the others, embracing the life she'd always merited. Ethan and Rose kept visiting, their bond with Tara holding firm. Each time they came, she greeted them with eagerness, recognizing the folks who'd fought so hard to give her a fresh start. For Ethan, seeing Tara flourish was the greatest prize. The guilt he'd borne for years, the regret of not stopping her departure as a kid, had turned to calm. He'd kept his pledge to her this time. He'd ensured she was where she truly fit. The refuge had become all they'd wished for Tara and Ravi. They had space, company, and liberty. They were no longer bound to a world of walls and gates. For the first time in her life, Tara was truly at home. As time flowed, Tara fully settled into her new realm, no longer clinging to the safety of fences or dreading the wide spaces. She moved with assurance, her tie with Ravi strengthening daily. Together they roamed the refuge, played in the streams, and foraged for eats. But something surprising arose. Tara began showing hints of expecting the refuge workers, ever alert to the elephants' wellness, noted subtle shifts in Tara's ways. She was eating more than usual, resting longer, and sometimes seemed more guarded with herself. At first, they thought it might be a passing quirk, perhaps tied to shifting weather or herd patterns. Yet as weeks wore on, the clues grew clearer. Tara's belly slowly began to swell, and her hunger surged further. She also grew pickier about where she rested, favoring soft, shaded nooks away from the refuge's busier zones. Rose, who'd been part of Tara's care from the start, suspected she might be carrying. To confirm, the refugee's vet crew ran tests using sound imaging to scan for signs of a growing babe. The results were plain. Tara was with child. The news sparked thrill across the refuge. Tara's expecting wasn't just a big deal for her, but for the whole elephant-saving mission. The arrival of a babe meant fresh life, promise, and the species' endurance in a safe, guarded haven. Ethan and Rose were elated. They'd toiled so hard to give Tara the life she earned, and now she was set to become a mother, knowing elephants' long carrying time, nearly 2 years. They grasped this would be a slow, cautious road. The refuge workers promptly began prepping. They ensured Tara got top-notch nourishment, offering a diet packed with nutrients and minerals to bolster her health and the babe's growth. They also tweaked her surroundings, adding more shaded spots to rest and ensuring steady access to clean water. Ravi, sensing Tara's shift, grew even more watchful of her. He stayed near, often strolling beside her and nudging her gently, as if to assure her she wasn't alone. Tara's expecting moved along well. Though it needed constant oversight, the refuge's vets checked her often, ensuring the babe was forming fine. Throughout, Tara stayed active, though she moved more carefully as her belly grew weightier. She played less in the water, preferring to wade slowly rather than splash. She also grew more patient and steady, as if naturally readying for motherhood. Ethan and Rose visited frequently, spending time with her and tracking her progress. Ethan especially felt a swelling pride and joy. Tara, the elephant he'd grown up with, was now set to enter a new life stage. As months ticked by, Tara's belly grew markedly bigger. She moved slower, took longer rests, and sometimes leaned on trees for support. Despite these shifts, she stayed sturdy, never showing strain. Then, as she neared her term's end, the refuge workers began readying for the birth. They set up a quiet, safe spot for her, away from the refugee's busier patches. Soft sand was spread on the ground to cushion her and ensure a cozy space when the time came. After nearly 2 years of waiting, the moment all had awaited arrived. The refuge workers had kept close watch on Tara, and one evening they saw she was restless. She paced slowly, pausing now and then, as if tuning to something deep within. It was a sure sign she was starting labor. The workers stayed back, giving her room she needed while ready to step in if required. Ravi stood close, watching keenly, though he seemed to sense this was Tara's time. Hours passed, and Tara was still in labor. Elephant's birth standing, using gravity to aid the babe's arrival. As the pangs grew sharper, Tara let out low hums, her frame swaying softly. The process was long, but she held strong, instinctively knowing what to do. Then, in the early morn, the babe was born. A tiny, crinkled elephant emerged, landing gently on the soft earth. The workers held their breath, awaiting those vital first instants. Tara turned at once, her snout reaching for her newborn. The babe was still for a beat, adjusting to the shift from womb's warmth to the cool dawn air. But then, with a faint twitch, the calf stirred and made a small noise. It was alive and well. Tara wasted no time. She gently prodded the calf with her snout, urging it to rise. Newborn elephants take time to find their legs wobbly and frail. The babe struggled, slipping a bit, but Tara stayed patient, nudging and steadying it. Ravi, though first keeping distance, stepped nearer, his snout stretching. Curiously toward the tiny calf, he let out a deep, warm hum as if greeting it. The babe tried again, pushing up on shaky legs. After a few stumbles, it finally stood. Teetering but resolute, it stayed upright, leaning on Tara for balance. The refuge workers, Ethan and Rose, watched in awe. It was a moment of pure wonder. Tara, once lost and alone in a zoo, was now a mother standing tall beside her newborn. Over the next days, Tara poured all into her babe. She kept it near, guiding it to feed and teaching it to wield its wee snout. The calf, brimming with wonder, explored its world under its mother's and Ravi's watchful gazes. Ethan and Rose visited, their hearts swelling with glee. They'd been there when Tara was sunk in gloom, and now they saw her grandest moment, becoming a mother. The refuge had given Tara a second shot at life, and now it gave a new generation the finest start. The calf would grow up amid other elephants, free to roam, play, and learn. Tara had at last found the life she was meant for, not just for herself, but for her babe too. After Tara birthed, Ethan and Rose were so thrilled, and their zeal for wildlife safeguarding deepened. Their names grew famed in the field. Their toil hadn't gone unseen, and soon doors began opening for them in ways they'd never foreseen. Rose remained a core part of the refuge. Her skill in elephant tending made her a top name in wildlife healing. She worked relentlessly, not just caring for the beasts, but also training fresh keepers and pushing for better handling of elephants in captivity. She'd begun as a humble zoo tender, but now she was always called to summits, asked to speak, and even sought by groups aiming to boost elephant care globally. Ethan, meanwhile, had risen as a noted wildlife saver. His work in study and nature guarding had taken him worldwide, from elephant havens in Africa to saving efforts in Southeast Asia. His drive to shield wildlife led him to team with global bodies. Over time, he'd become a key voice in refuge building, aiding other sites to enhance care for rescued critters. Despite packed days, they always carved time for Tara, Ravi, and their newborn. They visited the refuge often, ensuring the elephants thrived. Seeing Tara raise her calf was one of their richest rewards. The babe had grown sturdy, playing under Tara's keen eye and learning from Ravi. It was the ideal scene of what they'd hoped when they first chose to bring Tara to the refuge. Over time, Rose and Ethan had kept a work-only tie, but there was something richer between them, a mutual grasp, a link that had built over years. From the moment Ethan arrived at the zoo, they'd clicked over their shared care for critters. The link grew firmer, rooted in trust, regard, and countless hours spent side by side. They both knew there was something unsaid between them, but neither had moved on it. Their work had always come first, and they'd stayed wary not to cross lines. They prized their bond too much to risk it, and they weren't sure if they were set to blend their private lives with their work ones. But as time wore on, they couldn't overlook the quiet beats. The way Ethan always sought Rose in a busy room, the way Rose felt calm when Ethan was near, the way their talk stretched beyond meeting ends. It wasn't just about tasks anymore. One dusk, after a long day at the refuge, Rose and Ethan sat on a seat gazing over the elephant pen. The sun dipped. Tara and her calf stood by, the water, their snouts splashing playfully as Ravi watched. It was a tranquil scene, one that needed no words, but for the first time, they let themselves voice what had simmered so long. Ethan had always been cautious, never wanting to muddle his work life with personal stirrings. But as he eyed Rose, he saw she'd become more than a teammate or pal. She'd been there, through every turn of Tara's path, backing him when choices weighed heavy and cheering winds beside him. Rose, too, had stayed guarded. She'd given her life to her craft, never letting anything sway her. But with Ethan, it felt distinct. He got her realm, her fire, her devotion to the critters. She never had to spell it out. He just knew. It wasn't a rash choice or sudden spark. It was something that had grown slow, something natural. So they chose to step forward, gently, without haste, without risking what they'd built. They agreed to keep their tie private at first, not wanting it to clash with their work. Their careers stayed their focus, and they aimed to ensure their personal link wouldn't dent their duty. For the most part, their daily workflow held. They kept teaming up, joining talks, and homing in on their shared goal. But outside work, they let themselves savor small joys, quiet meals after long days, dawn strolls at the refuge, moments chatting about things past saving. Their tie was built on shared insight. They both knew their work's demands, the travel, late nights, the wild turns of saving efforts, but instead of a hurdle, it bolstered them. They were each others' top cheerers, lauding wins and offering solace in lows. As time flowed, their tie naturally came to light among peers. Most weren't shocked. Many had long sensed the link before they'd owned it themselves. Despite their growing bond, neither slacked in their craft. Rose kept pushing the refuge's work, launching fresh drives to save more elephants and better their lot. Ethan took on bigger saving roles, pressing for wildlife shield laws worldwide. But no matter where work led, they always found each other, whether meeting at the refuge, traveling for a task, or just checking in on hectic days. They stayed steady in each other's lives. One day, as they watched Tara's calf romp beside her mother, they saw how their path together echoed Tara's own. She'd once been adrift, unsure of her days ahead, but through patience, care, and the right setting, she'd bloomed. Just like Tara, bold. They'd taken their time, and now they were right where they belonged. Ethan had never rushed things, and when it came to asking Rose to wed, he wanted it flawless. Their bond had grown so smoothly over time that it felt like a silent vow had long been set. Still, he wanted to make it formal in a way that mattered to them both. Ethan spent weeks plotting the surprise, ensuring all was perfect. He knew Rose shunned big shows or public fuss, so he aimed for a close, lasting moment. He picked the elephant refuge as the ideal spot to propose, the place where their friendship deepened, where their love for critters united them, and where they'd forged some of their dearest memories. On the proposal day, he set up a special dusk at the refuge. With Pierre's aid, he arranged a quiet nook near Tara's pen, adorned with faint lights and blooms. It was a simple scene, but it mirrored all they cherished. Nature, calm, and the critters they'd given their lives to. That dusk, Ethan asked Rose for a stroll round the refuge, acting like it was routine. As they neared Tara's pen, Rose spotted the change, the soft glow, the serene air, and Tara standing calm, as if she too knew something grand was afoot. As Rose turned to ask Ethan what was up, she found him kneeling before her, holding a tiny ring box. Overcome with feeling, she shouted yes in glee before he could even finish asking. Word of their betrothal spread fast and joy filled the air. Their peers, kin and friends had hoped for this, and all were keen to cheer the union of two souls so tied by their zeal for wildlife. Though neither Ethan nor Rose had craved a grand wedding, their loved ones pressed for a big event, one that truly caught their path. Within weeks they'd planned a stunning outdoor rite at a wildlife haven. The setting was striking, ringed by green, wide skies and the far-off calls of critters. In their wild home, on the wedding day, guests came from everywhere, family, old pals, and peers from saving tasks. It was a fest not just of love but of shared aims, of two who'd given their lives to something beyond themselves. As they swapped vows, Tara and Ravi stood near, almost as if part of the rite. It was the perfect start to a fresh chapter, one where love, work and zeal would always entwine. What a striking path it had been. Tara shifted from a woeful beast who'd lost all she held dear and a place that felt like home, to living her fullest at the elephant. Refuge. She thrived in the open expanse, ringed by fellow elephants, including Ravi and her newborn babe. She'd found the liberty she'd once lost, and with it, gladness anew. The refuge was all Rose and Ethan had dreamed for her. Ethan and Rose pressed on with their wildlife saving work, devoting their days to guarding critters like Tara. They visited the refuge often, ensuring Tara and the others got top care. Each trip brought more joy, especially seeing Tara play with her babe. Teaching it to wield its snout and guiding it through the land she now claimed, life had turned in ways neither Ethan nor Rose had guessed. What began as a quest to rejoin an old pal had led to something grander. Their careers soared, their love deepened, and they built a life together that held meaning in every way. Tara's tale became a spark for many. Folks who'd once seen her glum at the zoo now heard of her stunning path to liberty. Her tale spurred more pushes to better critters' lives in captivity and stirred shifts in how elephants were tended. As years passed, Ethan and Rose began their own clan. They often brought their young to the refuge, sharing tales of the special tie between a lad and an elephant that had lasted a lifetime. Watching Tara, Ravi, and the babe roam free, they knew they'd made the right call. Tara was at last where she fit, and so were they. It wasn't just a journey's end, but a new one's dawn, full of love, aim, and the vow of a brighter future for all. This plainly shows the weight of love, fidelity, and grit. Ethan and Tara's tie proves true bonds never dim, even with time and miles. Despite years apart, their friendship held firm, showing care and kindness, etch lasting marks on the soul. Ethan didn't turn from Tara's pain. Instead, he acted to rejoin her and ensure she had a finer life. This shines on the might of resolve and heart and battling for what's just. It shows change, though tough, is sometimes key for growth. Tara first struggled at the refuge, but with patience, aid, and time, she adapted and bloomed. This teaches that stepping past one's safe zone can lead to real joy. Finally, regard for critters and their wellness matters, for they too feel and deserve care, liberty, and love. Through Ethan and Rose's work, Tara found a better life, proving kindness to critters can craft a more caring world for all. If you liked this clip, hit like and join, and tap the next clip popping on your screen.